Eiichiro Oda, Makoto Yukimura, Hajime Isayama, currently some of the most beloved writers in Japan. They've all spent a large portion of their life working on one series. It's such a large undertaking, they will probably never write anything like their masterpiece again. But what if there was an author who routinely made long, absurdly complex stories that not only have massive casts of unique characters, but they also rarely follow a singular main character, instead having many different perspectives, only adding to the complexity. Someone who has written more than just a few big stories in his life, and currently has 4 separate anime series adapting his work. Every single one is similarly crazy, complicated, extremely impressive from a writing standpoint, and most importantly, absurdly fun to watch. I am talking about an author that doesn't get enough recognition, Ryogo Narita, the author of Baccano, Durarara, Dead Mount Deathplay, and his most recent anime adaptation, Fate, Strange Fake. This is the life, career, and reason for why Ryogo Narita is such an underrated, brilliant author. I could find very little about Ryogo Narita's childhood and education, but it seems he was a genius from a young age. He grew up in Saitama, a city about 20 miles north of Tokyo. He loved manga and initially wanted to become a mangaka, but quickly gave up that aspiration due to not being a great artist. In 2002, Narita was in his final college year, studying satellite image analysis. He had no job lined up, unlike most of his peers. During his job search, at least that's what he told his family and college, he learned the deadline for the upcoming Dengeki novel competition was approaching. Here we see him show off one of his skills that would greatly help his career. He can write extraordinarily fast. According to one report I found, he finished the novel in only 2 weeks. He entered it into the 9th Dengeki Novel Prize competition and hoped for the best. At 22 years old, he tied for the gold prize, winning 1 million yen, roughly equivalent to $8,000 at the time, along with getting his novel published by Dengeki Bunko, a major light novel publisher in Japan. So what was this first award-winning story? It was The Rolling Bootlegs, Volume 1 of Baccano. Only 5 years later, the Baccano anime adaptation was released. If you haven't seen Baccano, it's an incredible anime. I'm not going to go over it too much for this video because it is the least faithful of all of his anime adaptations, and only adapts a small portion of his light novel series. However, it still perfectly encapsulates Ryogo Narita as an author. You'll see as we go further into this video, there are multiple traits common to his stories. Some have them more than others, but every single one contains these concepts to some extent. First is the ensemble cast of characters with no real main character, and the complex storyline that weaves these characters together. In an interview shortly after Baccano's first few volumes, Narita said this about developing the series. "When I started writing the story, supporting characters were born, and those characters came to grow in my head. When I tried dropping those characters in, once again the story seemed to be emerging on its own from there. With Baccano, it feels as though creating a character is creating a new story." This really shows the first most unique aspect of Narita's work. Despite having so many different complex storylines going on, the start point isn't figuring out the intricate story. The start point is the characters, and that's what creates the story. Normally you'd expect a long story that follows multiple character perspectives to be a plot-driven show, something like Lord of the Rings, where there is a main event or enemy to be overcome, and we see how different groups deal with the situation, whereas a character-driven story would be a more contained story with a smaller scope and fewer important characters, such as Breaking Bad, where the main character's choices, more than anything else, create the story. But it's the exact opposite here. Massive amounts of characters, no main event, only hundreds of choices from a ton of different characters. Even though this is a huge trademark of his, this isn't the true secret sauce of Ryogo Narita's work. We'll get into that later in the video. Next, Narita started writing 3 series at nearly the same time, taking swings but not hitting with all of them: Etsusa Bridge, Durarara, and Vamp. Itsusa Bridge was a short series that finished with only 4 volumes and ran from December 2003 to 2006. Vamp, despite very positive reviews from everyone who's read it, unfortunately fizzled out, with only 5 volumes from 2004 to 2010. It is currently in hiatus with no updates that it will ever return. But Durarara went on to go for a decade, from 2004 to January 2014, getting an anime, a manga, a few video games, and a freaking radio show. It was immediately followed up with the sequel, Durarara SH. Unlike Baccano, the Durarara anime by most accounts is a very faithful adaptation of the light novels. If Baccano explains Ryogo Narita's writing philosophy, Durarara doubles down on it. We see how the characters create the entire story. The city itself, consisting of gangs, friends, enemies, and supernatural creatures, is the plot, setting, and main character. But despite the unique storytelling style, Ryogo Narita's true strength is just how crazy interesting his stories are. From the first moments of Durarara, it's obvious something is strange about this city. The gangs, the dangerous individuals who live there, the rumors of the supernatural, but it eases you into it. The events of the first episode are very dull, simply a kid introducing his friend to the city. But the next thing you know, you're watching gang wars, mad scientists, huge supernatural events, and it's not clear where the mundane slice of life ended and the crazy over-the-top story began. One of the very first lines of the anime, spoken by Mikado, sums up this entire point. It was both very, very strange and also the sort of thing that could happen to anyone. Obviously, Narita's works are very unrealistic, but it's so easy to buy into them and, more importantly, feel the weight of the absurd, because it first grounds it. What if there was a city where a supernatural creature punished evil, gangs roamed, and crazy experiments were being done in secret? People would still be living their normal life. Guys would still be showing their friends around town. But the final piece to Durarara is simply that it's interesting. From reading Narita's interviews, and it's just obvious from his writing style, his story ideas always start with, wouldn't it be interesting if? Such as, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a Doulahan in modern day Ikebukuro? Or, wouldn't it be interesting if the main character of a series was actually the side character of multiple unrelated short stories? Hariyama-san, The Center of the World, is a work I unfortunately know very little about, except that it is a collection of seemingly unrelated short stories that all contain the same side character, Hariyama-san. As with many of Narita's lesser-known series, it has unfortunately never been officially translated into English. This ran from 2005 to 2009, only 3 volumes, but that means it was also coming out at the same time as Baccano, Durarara, Vamp, and Itsusa Bridge. I get that it's a light novel, and it's not like he had a weekly or monthly manga release schedule, but that's still insane to be working on that many series simultaneously. That's keeping track of hundreds of character arcs, going back and forth from one series to another. Finally, Ryogo Narita took a break from starting new series. For 7 years, starting in 2005, he only released light novels of the series he'd already created. The second half of Ryogo Narita's career up to this point is characterized by collaboration. His love of manga and similar pop culture works from his childhood did not change in the middle of his successful career. He excitedly jumped at the chance to write a side story for Bleach, and a what-if bonus story for completing the visual novel Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair. Both of these released in 2012. Then going back to Durarara, he completed the mainline light novel series, wrote a side story in Wednesday Smiling with Otsubaru, before immediately continuing with Durarara SH, Volume 1 coming out within months of the original Durarara ending. This guy is just a machine. Unfortunately, Durarara SH has been on hiatus since 2016, after Volume 4. Next, Narita released perhaps his biggest failure and one of his biggest successes, Stealth Symphony was his first venture into creating a manga series, collaborating with artist Yoichi Amano. This must have been very exciting for Narita, as he was able to achieve his original dream of working on manga. Despite high hopes in Weekly Shonen Jump, the biggest manga magazine by far, Stealth Symphony had very low interest, and was forced into a rushed ending, having only 3 volumes and 20 chapters. I read it for this video, and it's actually pretty fun. It is chock full of interesting ideas in a unique fantasy world. It has the usual trappings you'd expect from Narita's writing. Multiple groups within a city that clash and interact in interesting ways. Absolutely insane characters who are extremely powerful, etc. But this series also has a very clear main character and more traditional plot. Since it was cancelled and forced to end, reading this shows you what happens when you remove all the technically unnecessary parts of a story. There is the setup and immediate payoff. It's very abrupt, but at least it had an ending. Only a month before Stealth Symphony, Volume 1 of another new series by Ryogo Narita released. This series only existed due to his love of Japanese pop culture, and its fate couldn't be more different than his first manga. According to Narita in a recent interview, way back when he was in talks for the Baccano anime, a friend mentioned a man in the gaming world who wanted to meet with him. His name was Nasu Kinoko. Narita had heard of his work, but hadn't experienced any of it firsthand. In 2007, he played through Fate Stay Night, and like many others who try out one Fate series, he got way too into it. He soon found himself writing a fanfic about a fake Holy Grail war set in America, and sent it to Nasu himself, who posted it on the Type Moon website just in time for April 1st. Flash forward to 2014, and Volume 1 of the light novel Fate Strange Fake is hitting store shelves. The beginning of a new series that will span over 10 years and spawn a manga and anime adaptation. Narita has confirmed on Twitter that it will end at Volume 10, coming out later this year, 2026. If you know anything about the concept of a Holy Grail war, it's a perfect match for Ryogo Narita. A large cast of magicians summoning servants who are legends from history to battle each other and claim the Holy Grail, which will grant any wish, is exactly the kind of thing you'd want the author of Baccano and Durarara to write a version of. And he did not disappoint. Season 1 of the Fate Strange Fake anime, which just finished airing, is the reason I decided to make this video. This story is absolutely insane in its scope and complexity, even considering who is writing it. It's really obvious Narita is a fan considering the many references to the larger Fate world. Beyond that, he manages to make this fake Holy Grail war even more insane, huge, and chaotic than a normal one. I don't know if Fate Strange Fake is Narita's best work, but it feels like the culmination of all his storytelling skill up to this point, both in the difficulty of writing such a complex story and his love for the source material. Next, he collaborated with another manga artist on a very short series that I can't really find any information about. It serialized in the monthly magazine Shonen Serious from 2016 to 2020. It finished, purposefully it seems this time, with only 2 volumes, called Kuroha and Nijisuke. So, with the experience of writing 2 very short, one being failed manga series, Narita finally got to be involved in a very successful manga beginning in 2017. Shinta Fujimoto was a huge fan of Ryogo Narita's work, and got to be the artist for the Baccano manga adaptation, which ran for 3 volumes. With this connection, he began working with Narita on an original work. This seemed to be a better fit for multiple reasons. It continued the momentum from the Baccano adaptation, as it released in the same magazine, Young Gangan. This magazine is aimed at the older seinen demographic, which seems a better fit with Narita's storytelling, both in its complexity and freedom for more brutal content. The Dead Mount Deathplay anime is super underrated. It starts with taking the isekai concept and turning it on its head, but after the twists and turns of the first episode, it has all the signature style of a Ryogo Narita work. We got info brokers, assassins, literally every character is crazy crazy in some way, and there are tons of secret supernatural stuff going on with all the different factions in the city. It's got the spirit of an assassinated boy possessing a shark toy as one of its vitally important characters. Exactly the kind of thing you should expect this far into the video. Although having a huge cast of characters, Dead Mount Deathplay does have a clear main character that the story follows. Because of this, one aspect that I had previously missed from other Ryogo Narita stories became very clear. More or less, any story ever written does this, but it's so unashamedly obvious in Dead Mount Deathplay that the events are conveniently interesting. I explained that with Durarara, most of his ideas come from, wouldn't this be interesting? But what I realized from Dead Mount Deathplay is that the way he gets those interesting situations to happen is often just the most convenient way. Wouldn't it be interesting if these two diametrically opposed characters interacted? How about they just randomly meet up in a bar, along with a whole lot of other crazy characters? Dead Mount Deathplay is a blast, and I can't wait for more. Next is another short series in the world of Bleach, Can't Fear Your Own World. These 3 volumes released between 2017 to 2018. Narita collaborated closely with Tite Kubo on all his Bleach novels, with some stories being based on storylines Kubo couldn't fit in his original manga run, which had a famously rushed ending. I unfortunately know very little about Bleach, so I don't really have any comments about it. But another Bleach novel titled Don't Bleach My Fist is the latest project currently announced from Ryogo Narita. This also seems to be based on an April Fool's story concept. That is all the relevant works I want to go over in this video, but I will note there is more he has done and is currently doing, such as Pandora Shark, which seems to be a part of this media company he's involved in. I have no idea what's going on there. Ryogo Narita is incredibly underrated. Despite the major successes of Durarara, Baccano, and Fate Strange Fake, very few of his series have been officially translated and released in non-Japanese markets. And even popular series like Baccano were only recently brought over. The latest 2 volumes were officially translated and released in 2023, despite the Japanese release dates being 2013 and 2016. Having looked at his writing history, there are 2 main things about Narita I want to point out beyond his writing style. First, he is an extremely hardworking writer. All of the volumes he's written in so many different series. It is astounding. This doesn't even take into account that in 2017, he was diagnosed with an incurable disease that caused inflammation in his joints. This delayed several projects, but obviously hasn't stopped him. Second, he loves storytelling. His stories are filled with incredible ideas, and he loves many other worlds beyond the ones he created, like Fate and Bleach. It's clear he wasn't just a successful writer hired to make stories in these worlds. He truly loved these worlds as a fan of the original works, and that's why he took the jobs. Lastly, I want to talk about the negatives of Ryogo Narita's work, as all I've done so far is praise him. The first is somewhat excused by his illness, but of his 3 first main series, Baccano, Durarara, and Vamp, only one actually ended, and that one is Durarara, which immediately continued with a sequel that went on hiatus. It's clear he has the ability and plan to finish his work. Fate Strange Fake is ending soon with Volume 10. He's created numerous short projects with clear endings, but he also continues to take on shiny new projects even when fans of his classic series have been waiting for over 10 years to see the conclusion, or at the very least, a continuation. On Twitter, Narita has said he plans to continue Baccano and Durarara once he finishes Fate, but then they announced Don't Bleach My Fist, so I guess we'll see. The second negative is the critique of his writing itself. You could say the large ensemble cast makes the stories too confusing and similar sentiments, but that is very subjective and often just a matter of taste. There are times, especially later on in Durarara, when the story would follow new characters that were uninteresting, but it never stayed there for long enough that it became completely boring. One of the benefits of following so many different groups. I can't call it a flaw, but there is something lacking from all of Narita's work that I've seen. Although his works do have themes and explores many ideas, they don't have the depth of some of the best anime I've seen. I think this is a major reason his works are often overlooked. The stories themselves are so over the top and complex, there isn't a lot of room to really dig deep into a singular character or concept. script. That said, the stories are so singularly focused on being entertaining, I don't really care and wouldn't call that a flaw. So if the events of Durarara and Baccano kinda fade from memory in a way other great series don't, perhaps it's the lack of depth, along with, of course, the sheer number of characters and plots to remember. But that love of pure, entertaining storytelling, how the characters create the plot, how absurd the events are while still somehow feeling grounded, is why I absolutely love the storytelling of Ryogo Narita. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about this prolific author, and if I should make more videos like this in the future. That's all from me, Jamio.